Now, I know you hit the thumbs up, correct? Let's take a moment and appreciate the fact that you have hit thumbs up on this video. I'm watching you, son. Just kidding. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to Prepper Nation. This is, of course, John. Quickly, tomorrow morning, if the radioactive podcast is your thing, looks like we're a go for 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the morning. If it's not, just, you know, gloss over it and go on to something else. I will not be offended. So, thank you for all of the comments yesterday on the video. There was a lot of feedback, and I appreciate it. I do read every single comment. So we're sticking to that criteria. Seem like a lot of people are tired of the end of the world prepping stuff, okay? And a lot of people were talking about they want to get back on the road to practicality. So again, the criteria, has it happened before? Today's topic, we're checking that box. Is it likely to happen again? We're also checking that box, and I will explain here in a moment. People are going to say, John, why are you in love with the clickbaity titles all of a sudden? And my response would be, I saw this in chat yesterday, the replay. My response would be, well, you are here, which means we are both having a love affair with it, are we not? So we are talking about the draft, conscription, the idea of being forced to fight in World War III. And I'm sorry, females, ladies, right? I don't like to use the biology terms, but you got to do what you got to do here on the Big G. Ladies, I'm sorry. You're probably going to be drafted as well, as long as you are in that first cut, that age. We're going to go over the draft, how it worked last time, why I think we're going to see it again, and why every single one of us is going to be affected. So, of course, we know that recently selective service has become automated. And a lot of people are on social media, they're fact checking, these fact checkers. I don't know where they come from, but they're fact checking. They're like, well, it's no big deal. The selective service has been a thing for a long time now. And when I see these comments, I'm like, you need to pay closer attention because there's a lot of other stuff going on surrounding the selective service process that has not been going on for a very long time. And I'm telling you, all of this stuff is intertwined, okay? Not gloom and doom, but I'm speaking truth to you tonight. So currently, the way this works is U.S. males 18 to 25 years old have to, in the past, they've had to actually file for selective service, make themselves eligible in the event that there would be a draft. But again, now it is going to be automated. So 18 to 25, if you're a male, you're already on the hook. There's a lot of speculation out in the community. There's a lot of, quite frankly, misinformation in terms of ladies being drafted. A lot of people are saying it's already a done deal. As of filming this, ladies, there's not a law in place that would force you into selective service. There is, however, a bill in a Senate committee that is recommending this change take place. So that it's very strange. Let me back up here for a second. Right? It's very strange. All this confusion. How many genders we got? Blah blah blah. Then when it comes time for the government to start conscripting people, all of a sudden we're back to two genders. That's weird, isn't it? But I digress. Point is, there is a bill, an active bill in a Senate committee. In order for this to become a law, it would have to pass both chambers of Congress, and it would have to be signed by the sitting president. Do I think this is going to happen? Yes. When? Very hard to say. I don't think it would be before November because this is a really, really, really bad look for any presidential candidate. But let's say we get a second term president, Trump or Biden. All right, but let's just use Biden for a second because now we're glooming and dooming. 4 more years of Biden, right? That's gloomy and doomy in my opinion. So Biden gets back in. He's got 4 more years. He has nothing to lose. At this point, he'll sign anything that he's told to sign. He's pretty much there now, right? So I do think that this will eventually pass based on the recruitment numbers being so low here in the United States. Nothing else seems to be working. And the fact that we are ramping up for a world war on multiple fronts. We just don't have the bodies. Getting into Ukraine and Russia just momentarily, you guys know the drill by now. It's a proxy war, my opinion, right? It's a proxy war that we tried to fight with technology. We found out very quickly our opponents want to fight a numbers game, a meat grinder style conventional war. We do not have the numbers to win a war like that. We need bodies. The bodies are not signing up on their own. So again, I do think that we're going to see a draft, and I think ladies are going to be included on this. So the last draft was 1973 during the Vietnam War. The way this works, I think I'll actually use something from this for the thumbnail art. Not to scare people, but hey, it actually happened back in 1973. Men were assigned a number between 1 and 366. I believe that has to do with leap years and things like this. So, local draft boards were accused almost immediately of being impartial, meaning a lot of well connected men that were within the age requirement, or people from wealthy families, highly educated individuals, they didn't seem to be getting drafted very often. Whereas your minorities and folks that were considered poor, working class, they were drafted, seems like tenfold over the well-connected individuals. And there were a lot of people, even back in 1973, that said, hey, this process sucks. This process is rigged. The way I view this myself is, if you can't trust, if you're one of these people that does not trust the election cycle as being 100% above board fair, the selection cycle for 10 soldiers is probably going to be the same way. Just my opinion. So I've heard this comment a lot, and I'm with you on this because I have kids as well. My kids aren't fighting an elites war. They're not fighting for Z-Man. They're not fighting in another country for globalists. And again, I'm with you on this. I do not want to see my kids dragged into the military, forced to enlist, and sent to Europe to a meat grinder. I get it. So, according to the Cornell School of Law, as it stands right now, and I say right now because the rules, the regulations, they always seem to change during times of emergency. The government will change whatever they need to get the numbers where they need to be. Would be the clear cut way to put it. But as of right now, if you do not show up for military service after being drafted, you are facing up to 5 years of imprisonment and $250,000 in terms of a fine. That's the cap out for the fine in prison. Um, if you're a parent, guardian, grandparent, if you're somebody that is helping an individual skip out on the draft, you also are facing up to 5 years imprisonment and $250,000 fine. Basically, your life is destroyed. And the person that is drafted who does not want to go fight, your life is destroyed at that point when you get right down to it, because you're going to have a criminal record, you're going to have a felony, and you're on the hook for, again, $250,000. What person 18 to 24 do you know that can pay off $250,000 fine? Most of them are drowning in student debt and stuff like this. So it's meant to intimidate people. It's meant to force people into compliance when it comes to a draft. So during Vietnam, Canada took in 30,000 draft dodgers, and draft dodgers to me used to be a bad term. Oh man, but looking back and having kids myself now, I wouldn't have wanted to send my kids to Vietnam either, because retrospectively, that war made zero sense. And it was never about liberating the United States or keeping us free. It was a meat grinder. And so I understand people that were, I guess, fleeing to Canada during that time. However, in 2024, we need to understand Canada is also under the control of elites. So they're not going to be taking in 30,000 draft dodgers this time around. In other words, in layman's terms, there's going to be nowhere for you to run. There's going to be nowhere for your children, your grandchildren to run. Um, that part is going to look wildly different than Vietnam. So again, I hear that it's no big deal, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, there are too many countries right now in 2024 that are changing their stance on conscription. Some of them had gotten rid of conscription, which leads to a draft entirely. Some of them had become very relaxed on it. A lot of them have either re-implemented, conscription and a draft, or just like the United States, there are bills put into place where they are trying to pass new legislation. It's not a coincidence. Here's just a short list. Believe it or not, this is a short list of the countries that have kind of swung the other way all of a sudden. Britain, Belgium, Vienna, Lithuania, Norway, Sweden, France, Latvia, the Netherlands, Romania, Germany, and of course the United States. All of these countries, plus there are a lot more smaller countries, all of these countries, all of the sudden, having a deep discussion about recruitment numbers, a deep discussion about a military draft being implemented. This to me is not a coincidence. You're going to have people put their head in the sand and pretend like nothing is happening. I guess it makes them sleep better at night. I don't know. I wouldn't know what that's like, by the way, getting a good night's sleep. But these countries know that World War III is inevitable. They've been planning this for a while. We've talked about this for a while now. Seems like forever, but definitely for a while. How they've strategically moved pieces around the map. They're strategically positioning themselves near resources, and I mean they're loading for bear. They're loading for bear because they know World War III is coming. And now that they know our opponents are going to fight us in a conventional manner, now these countries have realized we need bodies. That's what it comes down to. AI, hey, I guess that's great in warfare and drones and stuff and cyber warfare, but it comes down to bodies. We have figured out when you're going to fight Russia, when you're going to fight North Korea. North Korea and Russia, by the way, just yesterday signed a military pact of aggression, meaning if a country comes after Russia, North Korea immediately jumps on said country. If a country jumps on North Korea, South Korea, for example, Russia is immediately going to attack South Korea. That went below the radar on a lot of people's radars. I did not miss that. It's just another coincidence that is adding up here for me, at least. So, according to a recent report from Reuters, and I think this is about 6 or 7 months old, recent enough, right? Approximately 20 million people in the United States are preppers to some capacity. Some of them are prepping for doomsday. We had this discussion yesterday. Some of them are prepping and trying to be practical and trying to survive storms and things. But there really has been a surge in prepping since the C-19. I mean, that's undeniable. A lot of people, as we discussed yesterday, have left and they've just said, it's not for me. I know a couple of people that did this. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I remember telling y'all the story. We know a married couple. My wife works with the lady. They're very nice people. When 2020 hit, the C-19, they went balls to the wall with prepping. They were stacking. They were growing. They had a massive garden. I could not believe how big their garden was the first year round. They were canning. They were doing everything. And they got burned out. I mean, they straight up admitted it to us. They had no time for anything during the summer. They didn't have a lot of time to spend with their kids. They weren't going on vacations and things. And so I guess they're still situationally aware. They're still paying attention, but they're not doing any of that stuff anymore. They walked away. They decided, I'm going to live my life a different way. So people have left. but there's still a trend toward prepping, okay? And per this report, there are hundreds of thousands of these preppers who went completely off grid, completely offline. Me personally, I think that that number is way inflated. I don't know that we have hundreds of thousands of preppers who are totally off grid, totally offline. I think what is happening there, this is just my opinion, let me know what you think. I believe a lot of people have lost their housing and they're off grid because they don't have any other choice. You know what I mean? They're living in a car or they've had to resort to going to a tiny house or maybe they're living with family and friends. But I just don't see hundreds of thousands of people purely homesteading, not using the credit system, not using our monetary system, not using the internet. You get what I'm saying? That's a pretty large number. Um, and I bring all of this up for a reason, okay? I bring all of this up because you cannot avoid prison or war without being completely offline as it comes to a draft. If you're going to avoid the draft, or you're going to encourage your kids or your grandkids or whomever to avoid the upcoming draft, they are going to have to be completely offline, completely off grid. And I think that that's very, very hard. I thought about this a lot this morning and I said, that's extremely hard because it's one thing to buy a tiny house, buy a little bit of land, throw up solar, maybe dig you a well. You're doing the things, you're growing your own food, you're producing, and that's fantastic. But the government still knows where you're at. The government, I mean, they have people probably that are paid to keep tabs on you and know exactly where you're at all times. And so to get to an existence, like a nomadic existence to where even the government doesn't know where you are, to me, that's extremely, extremely hard. And so I really thought about this. I said, as a parent, what do I do here? I'm still, if it's World War III, I'm still going to encourage my kids, don't go. Take the jail time, take the felony. At least you'll be alive. It's not going to be easy. The fine, you can deal with it, but at least you'll be above ground to do so because in my humble opinion, when we reach a point where multiple countries have conscription going on, there's a high likelihood that the young people that are leaving, they ain't coming back, or they're not coming back in one piece. And I believe that our government already knows this, but there's a huge difference, in my opinion, between living off grid and being untrackable. And I think maybe there are some expert preppers out there. If you're one of these, you probably know it, who could become untrackable and untraceable, even by the authorities. But there are not many. There are not many people that are going to be able to do that long term during throughout the duration of an entire world war. World wars typically last 4 to 5 years on average. 4 to 5 years of being untrackable, untraceable by the authorities. Very hard to do, if I'm being honest. And then once the war's over, you're still accountable. They're still going to find you once you're back on grid. So it's a very tough choice to make. And I think when this draft finally happens, most Americans, the ones with their head buried in the sand, okay, they're going to realize how little control they actually have over their own lives. Not hating on the country, love freedom, love the concept of freedom. I think we are the freest country in the world, but I don't think we're nearly as free as people believe. Think about that. When you can be called up via a lottery system that a lot of people complain was rigged the last time, and you can be forced to go into the military, forced, or your children, forced onto another continent to fight someone else's war, to me, this does not spell freedom. It's one thing to defend your homeland, to take up arms and say, nobody's taking my country away. But to be sent to Korea, to be sent to Taiwan, perhaps, to be sent to Europe to fight someone else's war and be forced to do it, doesn't sound like freedom to me. I'm just saying. This is a war that is absolutely 1000% on the way. It's coming, folks. And it is going to be world changing. And we will all be affected by this. We will all be hurt by this in some way. Most of us know young people that are going to simply fly away into a meat grinder war. Some of us are going to experience a lot of hardship in terms of wartime economies and wartime shortages and a lot of uh, just a lot of negative stuff happening here at home because this is going to lead to massive protests. We already know it. The crowd that protests everything anyway. Many of them are eligible for this draft, and they're not going to like that one bit. They already hate the country. They're just looking for a reason. So, how do you avoid the draft? Again, this is currently the rules. The rules, regulations, they do change on the fly when there's something going on like this. Okay. So, if you're an ordained minister, you're still going to go into selective, into service, but you will not be drafted currently if you're an ordained minister. They still want to know where you are. They still want to make sure that you know that you can be called up, but you will not be called up. If you have severe physical disabilities, this can disqualify you from the draft if you have major underlying health conditions. And obesity used to be one of these, but you can already see with the military, they're getting more and more relaxed. It used to be if mentally your aptitude wasn't high, you weren't that smart, they would just pass on you. You're not good enough for the military. Well, now they're dropping the scores down and they're letting more and more people in. Trust me, they're going to drop that requirement for the draft. They'll smarten you up. They'll get you into shape. What's that? You're 50 pounds overweight. We'll work on you. You can go through boot camp twice, son, but you're going to be fighting. So again, obesity, education, criminal record sometimes can disqualify you, an addiction to drugs and things. But I'm telling you, if it gets bad enough, they're not going to disqualify you from the draft. They're going to find a way to get you there. So now that you have heard from me and you have heard my perspective on things, I want to hear from you. Again, I read every single comment. Would love to know what you think. How is the draft going to play out? Is the draft going to play out? Will the ladies out there be on the hook to fight as well? Should the ladies be on the hook to fight a billionaire's war elsewhere? Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Take care and God bless.